I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We have the pleasure of speaking with Alayna Bouie and Raihaanah Safee, who are both of the University of Toledo, and they presented a really interesting poster at the SCC Annual Meeting in LA on the effects of ultramarine blue on the appearance of foundations. So I want to thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. I'm really excited to talk about this.
So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into some questions. I'd like to know, first of all, could you tell us what initiated your study on this topic? What got your interest?
Yeah, so this research was actually started in 2019 by a graduate from our program at UT. Her name is Rowan Reyes. She came across a podcast called Fat Mascara, and a chemist was on the podcast at the time. Her name is Belinda Atlas, and she was working on foundations for darker skin tones and really fleshing out, making them look more realistic. And she did that with ultramarine blue, which was very interesting because no one was doing that before her. So that really piqued Rowan's interest. And then I joined onto the project, and it was so interesting, so fresh, but we didn't have a lot of time to really cultivate and really do something big with it at the time. So Raihaanah and Maddie Martinez, who's also on the project, they worked on it and they were able to create even darker shades and really flesh it out.
So maybe we could get into just an overview to start of the study and some of your findings. Who'd like to start on that for us?
I can start on that. So as we stated, we were evaluating the effect of ultramarine blue on the appearance of foundations. So foundations are typically made of the three iron oxides, red, yellow, and black iron oxide. And you use the opacifiers, zinc oxide or titanium dioxide to lighten the color's depth. So for when making foundations for deeper skin tones, they require a significant amount of black iron oxide, and this can sometimes lead to this displeasing ashy appearance on the skin. So what we wanted to do was evaluate if we can first create deeper foundations with ultramarine blue. And we also wanted to see if ultramarine blue has the ability to mitigate this ashy appearance. So we created 4 foundations, or we actually created 5 foundations, D1 through D5, and we had varying amounts of black iron oxide to ultramarine blue, and we were able to create deeper foundations with just ultramarine blue on itself, and it was able to mitigate this gray ashy appearance on the skin. Another aspect of our research was to evaluate the opacifiers and how they can contribute to that ashy appearance on the skin. Since zinc oxide and titanium dioxide are white opacifiers, and titanium dioxide has a higher refractive index, it has a tendency to leave a more whitish cast on the skin, which is not desirable for darker skinned individuals. So we wanted to see if we can also play around with formulating foundations with zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, since zinc oxide will be more preferable for consumers of darker skin tones. We also took a second leg of this research and wanted to see the impact of ultramarine blue onto foundations for lighter skin tones. And we were able to find that although lighter skin tones don't have to worry about an ashy appearance on the skin because of the lower pigment load, using ultramarine blue opens up the ability to have more undertones within that shade range. So it was very insightful to see how ultramarine blue impacted both the darker and lighter foundations in opening up more opportunities for undertones and creating more aesthetically pleasing foundations for both consumers.
So were these results that you kind of expected? Why or why not?
These were results that we, since there has been no previous research done on ultramarine blue and its impact in foundations, we were jumping in almost blind. We were hopeful that ultramarine blue would help to mitigate this gray ashy appearance just because of what we had heard from the podcast, but we were purely just doing this research and hoping for something beneficial. And we were happy to find that ultramarine blue was successful at mitigating that ashy appearance. We formulated loose powder foundations and stick foundations, and we also ran a consumer study to correlate all of these results and data points.
Just for people that maybe don't work in shaded cosmetics, could you give us a real quick overview? What are those challenges of working with pigments?
I just want to add that pigments are really heavily regulated in the US and in the world in general. So that's one of the things that you really have to think about, like what is okay for the face, what is okay for around the eyes, what's okay for around the lips, and things like that. So that's really my first approach when it comes to pigments, and why I was a little scared at first to honestly join this project, because you really have to understand those type of regulations, but also the color wheel and just knowing how colors work together.
One of the biggest aspects of our project was initially getting a foundation that actually matched a darker skin complexion individual. When you look at a lot of supplier formulas out in the market, their dark foundation did not even cover my skin tone. So one part of the legwork of our research was actually creating a foundation for darker skinned individuals. And that allowed us to understand how to play with pigments and the ratios that are needed, and how to see the color of the foundation in the pigment phase before you actually introduce it into your filler phase. So that was kind of the procedures that we took when formulating initially.
With these findings, how do you see this as kind of fitting into what the market needs?
So because ultramarine blue is allowed for use in the face area, it opens up the opportunity for formulators to have more color additives to use, and not just the 3 iron oxides that they've been using since the dawn of history. One unique aspect of our research is we play off of color theory. If you think of typical art theory, red, yellow, and blue are used, and black and white are used to lighten or darken the shade. So this is more just providing formulators with more tools within their kit to formulate for all consumers.
So, you have any next steps planned in this research? I don't know if you can speak to that or not, but or maybe there's some unanswered questions that you want to explore.
Yeah, so I'll go into that because actually my master's thesis research is piggybacking off of this research, where I'm actually looking at these shades in liquid foundations. So I'm doing two different emulsions. I'm doing water and silicone and then oil and water. And I'm really testing them because iron oxides have been thought to actually protect against visible light. So I'm looking at that and using a different instrumentation to see, are these pigments actually helping to protect against the visible light spectrum, which actually really contributes to things that plague a lot of darker skinned communities and tones, which is hyperpigmentation. So when you protect against visible light using foundations and tinted sunscreens, it can actually really have a lot more benefits than just cosmetic.
That'll be interesting. So when will you reveal this, or do we have a year or two before you're gonna?
So I actually graduate in May. I'm finishing the writing process right now, and it's so exciting. I've never been more passionate about anything else before. It's so exciting, especially since there's a huge rise in more awareness when it comes to sunscreens, especially for people with darker skin tones. Because before it was thought that, it wasn't something necessary. Darker skin tones, people with darker skin don't need to wear sunscreen, but that's not true. And it's really interesting to dive into the social aspect of it, but also the technical. So, yeah.
Yeah. We'll keep our eyes out to see what you come up with. That'll be interesting.
I actually wanted to add to the industry question, because I feel like a lot of people might not truly understand why this is such an important project. And the truth of the matter is that darker skin tones have been neglected for a very, very long time. Up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, foundation shades, they came out for darker skin tones, but they weren't actually skin-like. And that can have a huge impact on society in a way that if you don't feel confident when you're wearing something that's supposed to make you confident, it can really have a damper on mental health or just like society as a whole. So I think that having foundations that specifically work to make you feel confident it's a huge deal in the beauty industry. And I think that there's something to be said that there are consumers out there that are looking for this, and it is important.
Great comment to add on to that.
Please, go ahead.
ultramarine blue is not being readily used in the cosmetic industry. So even though people know this colorant is available, Fenty is not using it. The brands that are producing 40 plus foundations are not using it. So it really can help provide formulators the ability to provide foundations for a diverse range of shades. So,
yeah. And that also goes into, I know a question we got a lot in Los Angeles was a lot of ultramarine blue products aren't stable, or ultramarine blue can't be stable. In our research, we have not come across that. Even in my liquid foundations, they've all been able to withstand months of sitting in the stability cabinet and still looking and rubbing out in a way that looks really nice. So I think that my research is really going to expose how ultramarine blue actually can be stable. And a lot of formulators have strayed away from it because they're afraid of the stability. But I think that if we really research and work a little bit more in that, you'll see that it's definitely possible.
Did you do anything then special to stabilize it for the formulas that you were developing?
Actually, no. Well, if you're asking how did I test the stability, I basically do particle size analysis under a microscope. And I basically split up the samples in a way that I looked at them every month. So I looked at them once a month for 6 months, and was able to see how the particles were stable over time. Definitely the ones that were in the heated cabinet, they didn't necessarily last as long as the room temperature ones, but it was very interesting to see how they can work. And if L'Oreal could do it, I mean, I'm sure that, it's definitely possible to do it.
The world can
be a way. Did I miss anything else that you can think of?
There's one more thing that I wanted to say.
It's fine. That's why we're here.
So ultramarine blue has become a little bit more popular, especially in like the TikTok and influencer fields, because influencers have been using, and regular people on social media have been using ultramarine blue to actually make their shades look more realistic looking. And this is lighter shaded people are doing this. And it's becoming more popular to add like this blue. There's like a blue dispersion that people have been adding to their foundations. And it's really cool to see how consumers are starting to really get into that. And I think that formulators really should jump onto that trend.
Some self-formulators out there, huh? I wonder how they get the ingredients, if they're just getting samples from somewhere, or because
it's actually a brand, Wet n Wild. They have a dispersion, and another company has a concealer that's blue. I can't think of it. Oh no, Elf. They dropped a concealer that was blue. Their new HD camo concealer.
Yeah, so people are mixing the concealer and using it to really match their shades a lot better. So, yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. Huh. Well, you're definitely on trend then. Yeah, you're right there. Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us today. This is very insightful. I'm very excited to see some of this on-trend work. We'll be looking forward to the future rollout with your graduate project. And again, thank you both for your time today.
Thank you so much for having us.